So first of all, let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
So the Oakland A's take.
I'll tell you what, we haven't heard.
I really can't explain it. I mean, earlier in the day, there was reports of there was social media memes going around, these little flyers saying everybody purged today. It's a reference to a movie in which there is, a period of lawlessness.
A state of emergency in place across 4 California counties this morning.
Cause is still unknown, but the aftermath resembles a war zone.
Many of them absolutely confused when they get here. What do they have to do? What sort of status do they have here?
The age of wearable technology.
Amazing things happen when we merge technology with our bodies.
A historic day in sports as the IBA becomes the future.
This is not about technology. This is about right and wrong. This is not about technology. This is about right and wrong.
So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
All right. How's everybody doing? Excited to be here? Good. Turn in your Bibles to the book of Mark, chapter 4. If you have them, it will be on the screen for you. I'm going to be reading a story where Jesus and the disciples are in the middle of a storm. And I want to ask you a question today. I want to ask you something. Why are you afraid? That's my question for you today. That's the question for our church today. Why are you afraid? And it's the same question that Jesus actually asked the disciples here when they wake him up in the middle of his nap, in the middle of a storm. I'm going to read it. Let's read Mark chapter 4, verse 35. I'm going to read through verse 41. It says this. On that day when evening had come, he said to them, "Let us go across to the other side." And leaving the crowd, they took him with them in the boat, just as he was, and other boats were with him. And a great windstorm arose, and the waves were breaking into the boat, so that the boat was already filling. But he was in the stern, asleep on the cushion. Jesus always uses pillows when he sleeps. It's awesome. And they woke him and said to him, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" And he awoke and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm, and he said to them, "Why are you so afraid?" That's the question I'm asking you today. Why are you afraid? Have you still no faith? And they were filled with great fear and said to one another, "Who then is this that even the wind and the sea obey him?" Jesus, bless this reading of your word. May it challenge our hearts. May we learn and grow today to be more like you, to be a fearless people in your name. Amen. So today I'm continuing a series called Fearless. Look at your neighbor and say, fearless. And I want to talk to you today about fearless storms. And I asked you a question, why are you so afraid? Why are you afraid? And all I got to do is turn on the news, open up my USA Today app on my phone, turn on the television, and I could tell you why we're afraid. You see, ISIS is on the move. Israel and Palestine launching bombs at each other. Another mass shooting this past week. Gas prices rising. SAT scores are declining. You guys read that? Christians are being persecuted. There's thousands of Syrian refugees entering into all kinds of different countries, hundreds of thousands. Islam has taken over the world. Our food is genetically modified. Obesity levels are at an all-time high. The economy is up and down. Our prison system is broken. And Jesus asks, why are you afraid? I know some of you are Christians in here, not all of you. We're so glad that this is a church where you don't have to believe to belong. You can come and explore this faith journey with us, but a lot of us in this room are Christians. Jesus followers are broke. Some of you can relate to this. Jesus followers marriages are falling apart. They're getting divorced. Jesus followers' kids are rebellious. My 4-year-old, man, he's rebellious. Jesus followers are declaring bankruptcy. Jesus followers are getting cancer. And Jesus asks, why are you afraid? I want to talk to you about storms today because the reality is every single one of us goes through storms. What I mean by that is struggles. We go through challenges. We go through tough times. In fact, I've heard it said that every one of us is either just coming out of a storm, getting ready to go into a storm, or we're in this moment right now, this moment where we're in the dead center of a storm. And so the reality is storms are a part of life, aren't they? Struggles are a part of life. We struggle. We go through challenges. That's part of being human. That's part of being alive. And Jesus asks, why are you afraid? He asked the disciples. And I'm guessing they responded the way you and I respond when we go through storms. Jesus says, why are you afraid? And we just go, storm? And here they wake up Jesus and they're terrified, they're afraid, and they ask him some questions. He says, why are you so afraid? Why are you even afraid? Storm. There's a storm. We're in the middle of a storm. You see, it's not the absence of storms that sets us apart as Christians. Christians, we go through just as many storms as everyone else out there, sometimes more. It's our unshakable trust in the one who allowed the storms that makes us different. That we trust God no matter the circumstance, no matter the struggle. Storms make up different things for each and every one of us. You see, a lot of us are going through storms. We're experiencing setbacks. We're experiencing disappointments. We're experiencing struggles in our life. And these storms have us afraid. We're afraid. In a culture of fear, why wouldn't we be afraid? All we hear is fear, fear, fear. All the reasons why our world is gone to pot. Our country is on the way down, right? Our children, their future is going to be terrible. All we hear is fear. All that's fed to us is fear. And we're going through storms and we're afraid. And Jesus asks us, why are you afraid? And we're just saying, Jesus, storm. Storm. But today I want to talk to you. I want to talk to you about how fear, what it can do, how it can actually hinder you in the storm, how it can actually freeze you in the storm, how it can destroy you in the storm, but God has something better for you. He wants you to walk through the storm with faith, doesn't he? With faith, learning and growing through it and becoming more like him as a result of it. So number one today, I got 3 quick points for you. Number one, fear erodes our confidence in God's power. So if there's one thing I didn't lack growing up, it was confidence. I was 5'1" at the start of my freshman year of high school. I was a dominating force at that point. But I was in 8th grade, and I was even littler then. I'm in 8th grade. I'm one of the smallest kids, and I had this brilliant idea I was going to run for president. President of my junior high. Said, I have presidential features, right? Presidential giftings. I think I should be the president of our junior high. I think I'd do a great job. I think I'd win. I think, I'm going to do this. And so my grandfather, who pastored in Sacramento for many years, my grandma's actually here today somewhere. I don't know. Love you, Grandma. But he passed away 4 years ago. Was a mentor in my life. But he gave me an idea. He said, Caleb, I got your slogan for you. He said, here's your slogan. Don't be a mole, get out of your hole, and vote for Cole. And so I plastered that slogan. It's good, isn't it? Pretty corny, actually, if you think about it. But I plastered this slogan on all my banners all around the school. I'm handing out flyers. Don't be a mole, get out of your hole, vote for Cole. And people were eating it up, man. People are eating it up. My first venture into marketing. It was awesome. But I go into the election day and I do my speech and I'm giving all the promises, right? This is going to be the greatest school. I'll be the greatest president. We're going to change the world. I mean, I'm just going for the moon. And the election happens. I get elected. Landslide. Man, I just win. I dominate this other chick that was running. She had like 5 votes, right? I just dominated. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be the greatest president of all time. And then I realized being the president was not fun. So we had meetings every week. Every week, I mean, I'm meeting with teachers and the vice president and the secretary and the treasurer. And finally, I was just like, I'm done with this. I just stopped going to the meetings. They'd call me like 7 a.m. Caleb, where are you? Our meeting has started. I'm like, the president needs his sleep, all right? I'm a man of the people. I got to be rested for the people during the day. I just stopped going to the meetings. I just didn't care, right? And so pretty much the vice president, secretary, treasurer ran the student council for me, and I was just the figurehead. And it was a moment in my life when I realized I'm not good at everything, okay? I'm not gifted for everything, and my confidence level went a little down in this moment that, wow, I maybe am not the most presidential out there. But fear can erode our confidence in God's power. We serve a God of power. We serve a God that created the heavens and the earth. He created each and every one of you. He knows the amount of hairs on your head. He knows everything and every situation, every detail, minute detail of your life. But our fear can start to cause us to question the power that God has over our storm. And this is what the disciples do. The disciples start to question the power that Jesus has over their storm. They start to become afraid. They start to become fearful. In fact, the word that's used here, and I think it's pretty significant, the word that's used here for storm is the word seismos. It's a Greek word which literally means shaking or tempest or earthquake. This word is where we get the word seismologist, right? A person who studies earthquakes, or seismographs, which measure earthquakes. Makes sense? This is where we get this word, this Greek word. This word is used only 3 times in the book of Mark. It's used here to describe the storm that the disciples and Jesus are encountering, and it's used 2 other times. The first time is when Jesus dies on the cross, and it says there's a great earthquake. There's a seismos across the land. The second time is when the stone is rolled away from the tomb. When Jesus comes back to life, there is a seismos, an earthquake, and the same word is used here. And I think this is interesting. I think this is significant, this seismos, that it's used in these points of Jesus' power being released, the power of God being released. If God allows storms, even after we're obedient, then we start to question his power over those storms. Because what do the disciples do? Jesus says to them, get in the boat. We're going to go to the other side of the Sea of Galilee. We're going to take a little trip. Other side, they've been teaching. Jesus had been teaching. They've been with the people. And he says, get in the boat. We're going to go to the other side. And so out of obedience, they act. And some of you are sitting out there and you're saying, God, I've been obedient. I've done what you've asked of me. And still, you've allowed this storm to happen in my life. Where are you? Maybe you don't even have power to get me through this. But I'm here to tell you that God has allowed every storm because he wants to do something in you and through you. He wants to grow you, and he has the power in an instant to bring you out of that storm. No storm is too great for God. No storm that you're going through, that you're encountering, is too great for the God that we serve. And some of you feel that God has fallen asleep in your storm. You think God's asleep. And I think it's interesting here, right, that Jesus is asleep in the boat, he's got his pillow, keeps it real. And some of you feel like God has gone to sleep in your storm, as if he doesn't care or doesn't have the power to do anything about what you're experiencing. And here's what I would say to you. We need to be thankful and realize that God is with us in every storm. Because what the disciples didn't think about was, hey, Jesus is in the boat. If this boat goes down, Jesus goes down too. So what are we worried about? What do we have to fear? What are we stressing about? And I'm here to tell you right now, you may feel like God's asleep in your storm, but at least he's with you in your storm. And so you need to have greater faith and greater trust and say, God, this storm seems big and it seems like you're asleep, but you know what? I'm going to trust you through it. Because if God is with you, no storm can overcome you. No storm can defeat you. No storm can destroy you if God is with you. The original text breakdown of this, of when they wake up Jesus, what they say to him, and it translates it here in these verses, and it kind of gives us a couple phrases. But if you break down the 3 words that they say to Jesus when they wake him up, this is what they say. Lord, save dying. That's what they say. Like the literal translation. Lord, save dying. You see, they saw their storm, and they let their storm begin to overcome them. It began to erode their confidence in God's power, and all they could see was that they were, and the disciples, they became demanding and doubt-filled. And that's how we often get in our storm, don't we? We get demanding. God, when are you going to bring me out of this? God, when are you going to rescue me? God, when are you going to take me through this? And then we become doubt-filled. These 2 things happen to us. We become demanding, doubt-filled people. And we lose the confidence that, look, if God's got me in this, he's going to bring me through this. We have nothing to fear. We have nothing to worry about because he's right there with us. And they go on. And they even begin to doubt the character of God. Did you see that? They doubt the character of Jesus himself, which leads to number 2. Fear destroys our trust in the goodness of God's character. So when I was in college, this movie came out called Fight Club. And I can't recommend it. It's rated R. There's some things in there, but I was a heathen in college and I watched it, all right? And so, I mean, obviously you're in college and Fight Club comes out and you want to be a part of a fight club. And so all my boys, I was home one summer here in Sacramento. I'm home from college and my friends are like, hey, we're going to have Fight Club this Friday night. I'm like, let's do this. So I get in the room and we're going to draw names for each fight. And so I start sizing everybody up. Right? I'm sitting there, and I'm like, oh, I could take him, I could take him, I could take him. Okay, yeah, I could take every person in here except for him. Because you all know that there's always, in a group of friends, there's always that one friend that's a ninja. You know that, right? Like, there's always that one dude that did karate and, like, jujitsu, and every group of friends has this guy. I'm telling you right now. That one friend that is a ninja. And I'm like, I'm good as long as they don't draw his name, the ninja. I don't want to fight the ninja. I'll fight anyone else, not the ninja. And so they draw first name, Caleb Cole. All right, I get up. The crowd's going wild. You know, all my friends right there. I'm ready, boys. Let's do this. Pulls the name. The ninja gets drawn. So here we go. All of a sudden, right, like doubt starts to enter my mind, my heart. I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm fighting the ninja. But I got to be confident, right? Got to go into this confident. So the first 30 seconds, man, I am doing work. I'm like, I've never fought in my life, but I got my hands up. I've seen it in movies. I watch Rocky a lot of times. So I'm like, you know, I'm dodging and ducking and throwing some jabs here and there. And I got a couple jabs in there. Bam, bam. I hit him a couple times. I'm starting to feel real confident. I'm like, oh, I'm going to take him out real quick. Here comes the right hook. And so I fake left and come out like this, man. Like, you know, I've never fought. So I'm like way back here, like, ah! Like, here comes the right hook. And he's a ninja. So he just comes straight through the middle, just bow. Just rocks me right in the nose. Blood spurts everywhere out of my nose. I mean, he literally exploded my nose. Blood shoots. And I'm just like, I'm done. And I just throw my gloves off. Blood's all over the floor, all over me. I'm dabbing it. And my friends are like, you're good, dude. You're good. Just, you know, stop it up. We got to keep this fight going. It's only been 30 seconds. And I'm like, no, I am done. And so all my friends are like calling me out at this point. They're like, Caleb, don't be afraid. Don't be a coward. Don't be a wuss. And I'm like, I'm good, man. I like all this. I'm done. You can call me a coward. You can tell me that I'm afraid. I don't even care. I am not fighting this dude anymore. I don't want nothing to do with the ninja. So I threw in the towel, man. I was done, and everybody fought the rest of the night, and they were all dogging me, and I just didn't even care. It did not matter to me. You see, they dare question Jesus' character here. And in that moment, like, they were questioning my character as a coward, right? I had no courage. I was like, you're right. Like, I'm afraid. I'm scared. I'm a coward. I'm fine with that. But here the disciples, they dare question Jesus' character. You see, that's what fear does. It destroys our trust in the goodness of God's character. They say to him, and did you guys hear it when I read it? They say, do you even care? Can you imagine that? The disciples say this to Jesus, the Messiah. They say, do you even care? And if I'm Jesus, I'm going, do I even care? I came down to earth because I cared. I became a baby. Can you imagine being the creator of every single thing and you become a baby that needs his diaper changed? This is what God did. He humbled himself. Not only that, but he knew one day, do I even care? I'm going to endure a brutal death for each and every one of you. And you ask if I care? You see, our fear of perishing is often greater than our confidence in the very presence of Jesus. They had Jesus present. Jesus in the boat. His presence was with them. But our fear can overcome even the presence of God in our lives if we let it, if we buy into it. Jesus gives, and by my math, okay, and you got to, you can give or take one or two, but Jesus gives us around 150 commands in the Gospels, give or take. 150 commands where he commands us to do something. Now, of those 150 commands, the second most, right, the second greatest used command that he gives us is to love others. 9 times he tells us to love other people. You want to know what the number one greatest command that God gives us, that Jesus gives us, the number one greatest command that Jesus gives us in the Gospels, he gives it to us 21 times. And 21 times he tells us, do not be afraid. Don't fear. Don't worry. Be of good cheer. The most common command that Jesus gives us is to fear not. And yet we are ruled by fear. Why? Because of our storm. And Jesus is saying, why are you afraid? And we're going, storm. Storm. Why do you think we're afraid? We're in the middle of a storm. Charles Spurgeon said this, the Lord's mercy often rides to the door of our heart upon the black horse of affliction. Affliction, struggle, challenge, trial, whatever you're going through. You see, sometimes we think God's grace is that we don't endure trials or struggles or storms. But God's grace shows up greatest when we go through those trials or struggles or storms. That's when God really shows his grace to us, reveals his grace to us. We need to understand that in order to arrive at our destination, part of living is encountering storms along the journey, isn't it? Disciples are going from point A to point B across a lake, across the Sea of Galilee, and they encounter a storm on the way. The storms are what make the destination worth it often. They're what make us the people we need to become along the journey. Storms are what prove whether our faith has any real substance. You see, it's easy to have faith when everything's going your way. When you have all the money you need. When you get every job you apply for. When every time you want something, it comes your way. It's easy to have faith then, but it's hard when things don't go your way. When you lose that job, when finances are struggling, when your relationship is hurting, that's when faith is determined whether there's any substance, true substance to it. In Psalm 119, verse 67 and 8, it says, before I was afflicted, I went astray, but now I keep your word. You are good and do good. Teach me your statutes. You see, I think this is interesting that the psalmist is writing. He's saying, look, before I went through a struggle, through a storm, I didn't do what I was supposed to be doing. I didn't follow you the way I was supposed to be following you. You see, often the storms that we encounter, they bring us to our knees so that then we realize that we can't do this on our own power and we can only do it with God. We need storms because they humble us. So sometimes you're in here and you're going, I don't want this storm. And God's saying, no, you don't understand. I'm going to make you better through this storm. I'm going to strengthen you through this storm. I'm going to give you greater faith because of this storm. This storm is going to make you who I want you to be. And you're going to be able to use this storm to help someone else who's going through a similar storm. So we got to stop hating our storms and despising our storms and start seeing our storms as opportunities. Opportunities for God to use us. Opportunities for God to teach us. Opportunities for God to grow us. And that's easy for me to preach, but really hard for me to live. It's easy for me to stand here and say, no, see your storms as opportunities. But I've been in storms. And it's hard in those moments, isn't it? It's easy to get to doubt the goodness of God's character in those storms. But I'm here to tell you, if God brought you to it, he's going to bring you through it. He hasn't failed you yet, and he's not going to fail you moving forward. God has a plan for you. God has a plan for your life, for your family, for your future. And right now, I want to tell you, I know some of you are in the middle of storms. Maybe you're just coming out of it. I want to tell you today that God is going to use this to touch someone's life. And so stop despising it and start embracing it and saying, God, what are you wanting to show me? What are you wanting to do in me? What are you wanting to do through me? I'm going to trust you through this storm. It's easy to doubt the goodness of God's character in the middle of a storm. That's what fear does to you. It wants you to doubt how good he is, how great he is, his character, and how much he loves you, and how much he has good plans for you. But when you trust him and when you don't let fear come in, when you don't let fear overtake you, he's going to take you and he's going to use you. And he's going to use whatever storm. Third and finally, fear numbs our memories to the faithfulness of God's promises. What had the disciples seen? I want you to think about it. What had the disciples seen? They'd seen blind eyes open. They'd seen crippled people healed. They'd seen a couple bread and a couple fish multiplied to feed thousands. And I want you to hear this because I believe this is a word for someone here today. When Jesus multiplied the loaves and the fish and fed the 5,000, he didn't just make enough. There was an abundance. There was leftovers. The Bible says that there were 12 baskets full left over. You see, God is a God of abundance. And some of you here today have been living with this mentality of lack, this mentality that you don't have enough, this mentality that God doesn't care about you. And I want to tell you right now that God loves you. He has a plan for you. He cares about you. And he's here to tell you right now that there is an abundance that he wants to pour over your life. An abundance over your family, an abundance over your situation, an abundance in your job, an abundance in your life. I'm not talking about prosperity here. I'm talking about that God's people are a blessed people. The Bible tells us that over and over again. His people are a blessed people. Don't let your present situation numb you and your life numb you to the reality of God's past faithfulness. If you're here today, you have breath in your lungs, you have clothes on your back, you had a roof over your head last night, guess what? God's been faithful to you. Some of you don't even believe it. You don't give God the credit for it, but I'm here to tell you, whether you believe it or not, he's been faithful to you. Whether you believe it or not, he sees you. Whether you believe it or not, he still has a plan for you and he still loves you. You see, Jesus is right there with them. Isn't he? He's in the boat. He's in the storm. If they go under, he goes under. And so I want to say to you right now that fear is not a sin, okay? This series is about being fearless, but fear is not a sin. In fact, there's some healthy fear. You wake up in the middle of the night, your house is on fire, you run up out of there scared, that's a good thing, right? Like healthy fear. There's some good fear. It's the improper reaction to your fear that can actually become sin. When out of your fear, you actually push yourself away from God, you exclude God from being a part of the solution, that you are actually submitting yourselves to a position of fear. You say, God, you're not going to be a part of the solution. And you let fear overtake you, submitting yourself to this position. Some of you in here, you've had, joy-sapping worries, repeated dread, countless bouts with worry that frees you in insecurity and frees you in doubt, and that is not how God has called his people to live. He has something greater for you than that. My son, I talked to you guys about it, man. My son, he gets scared at night. He's 4 years old. He gets scared at night. And guess the first place he goes when he wakes up in the middle of the night? Mommy and daddy's bed, right? He doesn't ask permission. He doesn't see if it's okay with us. He doesn't see if if he fits properly. He just climbs up in and just lays himself right in between us. Why? Because there's safety there. Because his dad has got him. His dad is there to protect him. And in his mom and dad's bed, there's nothing to be afraid of. And so I know this may sound weird to some of you. But this is what I would say to you. It's the opposite of what the world would tell you. Because the world would tell you, man, you're in a storm. You got to be on that boat fighting for your life. You got to be battening down the hatches and adjusting the sail and throwing the water out the ship because you don't want to go down. But here's what I would say to you. As a follower of Jesus Christ, as someone who trusts in Jesus in the middle of a storm, here's my greatest advice to you. Go down in the boat, snuggle up next to Jesus, and go to sleep in the middle of your storm. Say, Jesus, can I get some of that pillow? That looks really comfortable. Can you slide over a little bit? I'm just gonna go to sleep next to you. I know it seems like, no, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make any sense. Let me tell you right now, what doesn't make sense to the world is what actually makes sense in God's kingdom. You see, God's people live counterculture. We're not on the boat throwing out water, trying to batten down the hatches, adjusting the sails like the disciples were. We're just going to say, hey, if Jesus is good, I'm good. I'm going to go lay down next to him. I'm just going to go to sleep in my storm. Because let me tell you, if Jesus is in your boat, if you have a relationship with Jesus and he's in your boat, your ship will not go down. I'm here to tell you that today. There's no way. It doesn't matter how big the storm, how scary the storm, how intimidating the storm. If Jesus is in your boat, if Jesus is a part of your life, your ship is not going down. So just go down there, snuggle up, trust him, and say, I'm just going to go to sleep in this storm. Jesus, I'm going to let you carry me through this in slumber and sleep. I'm going to have some sweet dreams up in here. I'm believing for a church of people that will be unshakable in the face of any storm. You see, fear will try to break us in the storm, while faith is what makes us in the storm. Fear wants to break you. But when we have faith in God, when we say, God, I'm just going to snuggle up. I'm going to go, Jesus, you're sleeping? I'll go to sleep too. He'll make us in the storm. Now I want to close right now. Listen, here's the reality. You're not going to walk out of here today, tomorrow, this month, and be completely 100% fearless. You're human, right? I deal with fear every single day. But here's what I believe. In your storm, outside of your storm, in your life, when you have faith in God, here's what I believe. You're not going to be 100% fearless walking out of here. But I do believe that God will strengthen his people so that they fear less. God's not going to make you 100% fearless because you're human. You're going to deal with fear. But I believe as we continue to grow and go after him and seek him and trust him in the storm, that he will help you to fear less. He wants less fear a part of your life, less fear a part of your heart, less fear a part of your future. That's the God that we serve. Would you bow your heads with me across this place?